Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuel. Here with me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, a couple of weeks ago, some 700 former national security officials, advisors,
None
who
of which we call friend.
exactly, who had served in administrations of both parties. A number of them had been Democratic administrations, they've been in Republican administrations, served with equal distinction, showing, for whichever administration they were working. Um, it's a very long list. It has all the usual suspects: Hillary Clinton, of course, Susan Rice, and the thrust of this letter, as you would expect, is that Kamala Harris is the most suitable person to hold the office of President of the United States.
Have a great experience, George.
Exactly, because she's old and she's thought deeply about matters of national security and international affairs, and um, and that Donald Trump must be kept away as far as possible from the levers of power. And of course, it was quite striking that they would say this, given that the Biden-Harris administration has brought the United States into such a sorry state, involved in two extremely serious and deadly conflicts, up to its eyes involved in them, both of which could escalate into something very much more serious. And then the only thing these 700 national security officials could think of is that Trump must be kept away from power, and that Harris, who's must continue to remain in power because everything is going so well. Um, so I thought it was just very interesting. Maybe we could take a look at this, just a few choice highlights from this distinct letter. And
Well,
here,
I'm
yes.
kind of glad the letter is together. I mean, the content of it, of course, is what we would expect. But I think we should appreciate that they all got together. So I think the indictments should start. Okay, it's a good list to work from.
That's right. Yes. So here they say Vice President Harris has proven that she is an effective leader able to advance American national security interests.
Based on what?
Exactly. That's the bizarre. She has proven. When did she prove that? When did that happen that she proved it?
Well, I tend to think that maybe, and we'll find out if people do dig enough, that she goes to the International House of Pancakes once a week. Okay. And that's her international.
International. Yes, you brought up that old joke that they did that to against Bill Clinton in 1992. Yes, his sole knowledge of international affairs was visiting the International House of Pancakes. Her relentless diplomacy. When did that happen? When was this diplomacy
She's
relentless?
very clandestine, George.
Yes. Not only was she diplomatic, she was relentlessly diplomatic with allies around the globe, preserve the united front in support of Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression. So again, they say it's a diplomacy, but diplomacy in getting all your clients, lined up behind you, that isn't diplomacy. That you're always going to get your clients, your satellites, your dependents to line up behind you. That's not what diplomacy is. Diplomacy means trying to get somewhere with your adversaries and trying to push talks with your adversaries. Just whipping everyone in line is not diplomacy.
Well, this is the same person that said that Ukraine is a country next to Russia. Russia is a bigger
Yes,
country. Ukraine is a smaller country.
that's right. That
Uh,
was her relentless diplomacy.
that was real, that's deep analysis.
um, and so a united front is well again.
No, I like that. She grasps. Keep going. I like this.
Yes,
Keep
yes. She
grasp.
grasps the reality of American military deterrence, promising to preserve the American military status as the most lethal force in the world.
Why the air quotes on lethal?
Yes, exactly. And it's very,
Either it's lethal or it's not lethal.
I mean, exactly. But also, what do you mean by that? We take it for granted that military forces are lethal. I mean, that's, we put guns into people's hands. I mean, for a reason, we expect them to be lethal.
Who has the most important non-lethal military in the world? We'd
Yeah,
have
I
to
don't know. I mean,
work
you
that
don't
one
really
out.
put a sandwich into the hands of a soldier. I mean, yeah, let's say, well, I mean, that's not really lethal weapon. So it says it's the most lethal in the world.
Yeah, but I
It's
mean, but by she grasped the reality of American military deterrence. Well, there are many other levers to defend national security.
right, right,
Usually, everyone, hopefully,
right.
the military is your last resort. But there are, national security interests could be advanced by, let me think, diplomacy.
That's
Oh,
right.
goodness,
That's
that
right.
we haven't seen for a very long time.
Well, that's right, and that's why it's so interesting that they say, "Oh, she's got this experience of diplomacy," so making her sound like some kind of a Kissingerian figure. But what their idea of diplomacy is whipping everyone into line behind America and against Russia. That's not what anyone has ever understood by the term diplomacy. And again, it's for them, it's self-evident that we should just keep this Ukraine war going, and therefore, that's where Harris will be the most
But
reliable.
it's never been explained to anyone why continuing this war is in America's national
No,
security. It's never been
no,
explained. You know
no,
why?
never.
Because you can't.
You can't, and that's why these 700 naturally they all think this. This is exactly what they think. 700. That's a big list.
Well, that's what they're going to work for. For me, it's a list that you can start the indictments, but for someone else, it's a employment roster.
yeah, because back in 2020 they only whipped into line the 51 former intelligence officials to tell us that this was all had the earmarks of a Russian disinformation operation. None of them has suffered any consequences for actually putting their reputation on the line for something that was patently wrong, false, and harmful to U.S. interests.
And,
They're all doing very
meddling,
nicely.
meddling in an election.
And meddling in an election, exactly. Intelligence people meddling in an election. Anyway, so the letter goes on. The contrast with Mr. Trump is clear. Where Vice President Harris is prepared and strategic, is she? No. He is impulsive and ill-informed.
What is she prepared for?
And when has she been informed? I mean, you just mentioned that time when she was describing the war in Ukraine. That Russia's a big country. Ukraine is not such a big country. When did she ever? When was she informed?
Well, I don't even know if she's prepared to make a ham sandwich.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think so either. He has he's heaped praise on adversarial dictators like China's Xi Jinping, North Korea's Kim Jong-un, and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Now, of course, this is again one of these awful cliches, as well as
I've never understood the import of this. For me, it's just so empty and meaningless. Okay.
it's completely meaningless because, of course, and as well as the terrorist leaders of Hezbollah, well, all he has ever said is that somebody like Xi Jinping is at the top of his game. Well, he probably is. You don't get to the top of that pyramid in China without being very smart and at the top of your game, and to survive for so long. And so yeah. So the same thing is.
Well, I mean, I think as far as FDR and was concerned, Winston Churchill's that Stalin was pretty much on top of his game too.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So what does that mean?
It doesn't mean you're absolutely right what you just said, because in fact all of the people, everybody who dealt with Stalin during the war, all these Westerners were no commie lovers. They were said, hey, Stalin was really on top of the military details, the diplomatic details, far more so than either Churchill or FDR. He was really on the ball. And then again, these were Western military leaders who had no love for Stalin. So exactly, and and then I guess these days they would be attacked. Oh, you're heaping praise on a communist tyrant.
Well, I mean, what is really ridiculous about this is that Donald Trump seems prepared, irrespective of heaping praise, whatever
Right.
that means. He's prepared to talk to the Chinese, to the North Koreans, and to the
Right.
Russians. What's wrong with that?
And that's it. Again, we can say, oh well, he's not going to get anywhere with Ukraine and so on. But at least he has put that forward that he's going to get on the phone to Putin. No other Western leader has said this. I mean, he's the only one who has said he's going to get on the phone and talk to Putin. And that he doesn't think there's any other way of trying to resolve this without getting on the phone and talking to him.
What is the other way? There's none.
We have to send more arms to Ukraine because the more we send, the more likely it is that Putin will be forced to go to the
How's
negotiating
that
table.
worked out so far?
How exactly? How has that worked out so far? Exactly. So they go. Conversely, he has publicly and privately excoriated the leaders of our most steadfast allies, including the United Kingdom, Israel, Australia, Canada, and Germany. Well, my
So,
view is that it's too little. You should have done
yeah,
more.
well, I mean, they're vassal states. He can say what he wants to say. Okay,
Yes.
I mean, who cares? Trump has said something bad about a British prime minister. So they're no longer an ally. Are they going to bolt? Are they going to join the Russians and the Chinese? No, of course not. Because because an American alliance system works where the leader spits down and everybody says, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" That's how it works. Okay. Yeah,
Well,
George, do you actually care what the leader of Australia has to say?
no, of course
No,
not.
I don't either. Okay.
And this is what, but that's what,
Who
yeah,
cares?
that's what's so funny because do they think any American cares? Do they think that somehow, oh, I'm really worried that the Australian Prime Minister isn't happy with Donald Trump? That really upsets me. I'm definitely not going to vote for Trump,
Oh yeah,
because if the
well,
Australian Prime Minister doesn't want him in office, then I'm not going to vote for him.
so, of course, because then the Australians will join in a military alliance with the Chinese, George.
That's
Don't you
right,
know?
exactly.
I mean, they say Trump because there's no cost to it, because that's the architecture of empire. That's how it's supposed to work.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you're right because of course, when you said, thank you, sir, may I have another? That's exactly the attitude of these supplicants. So when it turned out with Angela Merkel, her personal phone was being listened to by the Americans, that didn't make any impact on her. She found this out. Her own personal phone had been tapped by the Americans. They were listening into all her conversations, and it didn't affect anything. So why should one respect Angela Merkel? You have the British who come groveling to Washington and do everything the Americans tell them, and the Americans give them nothing. Then no trade agreement for you.
No trade agreement.
No trade agreement for
I
you.
mean,
Oh,
no,
and by
there,
the
I
way, we
mean,
don't like your policy on Northern Ireland either. You better get with do something about Northern Ireland, to please us.
just a fact check here. To date, there has been no movement on a trade
No, there's
agreement.
been no movement. No, 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 no. There's no movement. But Biden still talks about the Northern Ireland. He's still very unhappy with the British policy on Northern Ireland. So that's so why should they enjoy respect? Why you only respect someone who merits respect. I mean, if they don't merit respect, then yeah, I mean, he abandoned our Kurdish allies. Oh,
The Kurds made it. Oh, good. They made it. Just like that third rate what did you call him? The Zelensky, he is a
a
sitcom
sitcom, yeah, yes, yeah, kind of a regular character in a sitcom.
yeah, recurring character,
That's a
recurring.
recurring character who,
So here we have the Kurds. They're recurring character.
that's right. They pop up every 2 or 3 episodes. The Kurds. He abandoned our Kurdish allies. And that brings back memories with the Kurdish allies. Well, it was a stupid policy that had been pursued before that. The policy in Syria which was arming the Kurds. First of all, it was disastrous. From they were trying to get them against Damascus, but they should have known that Turkey wasn't going to tolerate this indefinitely. Anybody with any knowledge, these clowns who suppose we're national security would have known you can't arm the Kurds, right on Turkey's border and not get a response from Turkey.
And you have to remember too, Iran in the long run wouldn't
That's
tolerate.
exactly in Iran. While ceding influence in the Middle East to Russia, Iran, and China.
But see, this is again, here's the imperial mindset, ceding influence, as if, countries in the West Asia, I'm getting like that phrase more and more, the Middle East, they don't have any agency. They got to be in one column or another,
Right.
okay? And that is the problem with the imperial project in the greater Middle East, is that not everybody wants to be a player. As a matter of fact, more and more so, they want to choose their own alliances, okay? And alliances that do not threaten American foreign policy interests,
Right.
okay? So
Right.
when China comes in and starts brokering a deal between the Saudis and the Iranians, the Americans freak out. It's just that, no, the American foreign policy is the problem. Okay, they're trying to get away from it. Okay, so again, this is this imperial hubris while ceding influence in the Middle East as if it's theirs.
Exactly, as if this is your own backyard. And just every part of the world is somehow America's backyard. Um, but what's interesting is about Iran. Now, if you really wanted to limit Iran's influence, perhaps it wasn't such a great idea to go to war in Iraq. And this was fairly obvious even at the time that Iraq and Iran kind of more or less checked each other. Iraq couldn't expand because of Iran. Iran couldn't expand because of Iraq. Just leave well alone. But once you did that, and it was obvious, and you knew that if you topple Saddam Hussein, and you know that some 60% of the population of Iraq is Shia, then Iran's influence will grow. So I mean, you can't blame this on Trump. This was the invasion of Iraq, which all of them, every single one of these 700 supported at the time. Now they may say, "Oh well, we will not handle well." At the time, they all supported it. Uh, so and further, Mr. Trump denigrates our great country and does not believe in the American ideal that our leaders should reflect the will of the people. Now, the will of the people.
There's got to be a footnote or an asterisk there, because what are they talking about?
Exactly, the will of the people. Now, the will of the people is the will of the people to get involved in this war in Ukraine. Is that also part of the will of the people? The people want to get into this war. I mean, is the will of the people to have a war with Iran? Is that the game? That's the will of the people. So I mean, what are they talking about? This will of the people.
Yeah, well, the United States calls itself the oldest democracy in the world. We can shove that aside for the time being. But when is war on the ballot? Do you want to go to war in the Middle East? Do you want to go to war in Eastern Europe?
Yeah.
Vote, please vote. It's never on the ballot.
No, it's never on the ballot, and it's by design that it isn't. And so this what they've now got here, which is that they're moving towards this war in Ukraine against Iran, which all of these national security officials, they're all on board. How when did the American voters make a decision on that?
Well, it's very interesting. We don't have it here. George does a wonderful forensic job. And I'm sure on the original, because I've come across this story before, and they had all of the names of the officials, 700 plus officials, and their current or former national security accreditation. But what was missing is that what boards they work on today. Okay. What are they doing now? Okay. Yes. What arms producer do they work for? What lobby do they work for?
Right.
They all do, George.
Yeah, that's right.
We're never told that. So again, this is even more an affront to even talking about.
That's right.
Reflecting the will of the people. Okay.
It
reflects your bottom line, 700 plus every single year. It reflects that.
Right. That exactly that's never mentioned. That the fact that all these people are making a ton of money, basking in this glory because essentially they open doors for these arms contractors, and it's a very lucrative line of business. Um, so then so then it says that while Vice President Harris follows the Democratic norms, we expect of any.
Yeah, how she became the nominee through Democratic norms. Nobody voted for her, and they're talking about Democratic norms. Oh God, come on.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, this is such a scam. This whole the Harris candidacy, which again the media just writing, oh, Harris this, Harris that, but they're all perpetrating the scam that somehow she was elevated to this position through any kind of a democratic procedure. Oh well, the Harris's candidacy, Harris is the nominee. It was a complete fraud.
Everybody, George and I looked out at my calendar here. This is September 4th. Now, can anyone,
October the 4th.
excuse me, October 4th. Can anyone make the claim that any of this would apply to Kamala Harris on April 4th of this year? They would say, what? Huh? What?
Right.
No,
Right.
never gave her a thought. Okay. No one gave her a thought.
No.
Okay. And as soon as the coup happened against Joe Biden, George and I said it in real time, you're going to see the biggest propaganda
Yep.
roll out of all
That's
time.
right.
And that's exactly what
That's
we're
right.
getting.
That's right. Including these images of her presenting her as a kind of a beauty. They've sort of done this artwork, taking a photograph and then touching up the photograph so that she looks like this beauty with her hair kind of being blown back by the wind. Again, total. It's the worst kind of propaganda. That's what you get, in these terrible countries like North Korea and so where you present the leader as this big figure, much bigger than everyone around him. That's the way with Harris. Um, and then including promises to abide by the outcome of the pending election and respecting the rule of law. Again, untrue. We know that the Democrats have already said they will not certify a Trump victory. They've already said this. So again, this is completely false, what you're saying. Not to mention that all of the attempts on the part of the Democrats to throw Trump off the ballot, to keep him off the ballot, the Supreme Court had to step in and tell them, hey, you can't do this. Otherwise, they would have done it. I would have thrown Trump off the ballot. Mr. Trump is the first president in American history to actively undermine the peaceful transfer of power. No, that is simply not true. Barack Obama did that. That's what Obama did during the 3 months between November and January the 20th. He worked precisely to undermine and destroy the presidency of his successor.
He was pretty effective in
He was
doing it.
very effective. It was a very,
Okay,
it was a, yeah.
and Mr. Trump is the first president in American history to actively undermine the peaceful transfer of power. There was a transfer of power.
Exactly. There was absolutely there was. Um, and then Mr. Trump threatens our democratic system. He said so himself. He has called for the termination of parts of the Constitution. He said he wants to be a dictator. This is so stupid. This is so stupid.
Everybody, it's not. It isn't even worthy a comment. This is so. This is so
right.
Stilted. This is so
Right.
out of proportion. Okay?
That's right. That's right. But they've always maintained these kinds of lies because we know exactly what he said. I mean, I remember that interview with Sean Hannity. Hannity said to him, "But you're not going to be a dictator." He said, "Oh no, just for one day. On my first day."
And everybody chuckled.
Exactly, it was funny.
It just the 700 here. You just don't understand levity.
Yeah.
You just can't crack a smile every
No.
once.
And remember,
I'm sorry for these people. I really do. Because you know what? Because these people, the way they are, George and I laugh at them all day long.
That's right. But it can be, of course, very menacing because remember, during Russiagate, when again Trump was being funny, and because he was talking about Hillary Clinton's missing emails, and then he said, at the news conference, "Hey, Russia, if you're listening, if you have her emails, please, release them." No, it was very funny. I mean, again, I was
I
watching it.
love
It was
WikiLeaks.
hilarious.
I love WikiLeaks.
Hey, Russia, if you're listening, and this was all taken seriously. That's evidence of the collusion, um, and so on. So and then so now yesterday we had the an interview with Susan Rice, played a prominent role in this letter, and
It played a prominent role in tripping up the Trump administration before
exactly.
taken
Exactly.
off
That's right. Exactly. When she and that's right. And then she wrote that email
to herself.
to herself. Exactly. Everything must be done by the book. And then Barack Obama said, everything must be done by the book. And did I forget to mention everything must be done by the book?
Just not a bright person.
Right.
George and I discussed before we started here, where did she come from? I mean,
exactly. She did. She again hoisted totally above her abilities. Obama liked her, and that was it. Obama. And he wanted to make her. I think he wanted to make her Secretary of State in his second term, but he knew he couldn't get it past the Senate because she had been caught lying about Benghazi. She was peddling that story of Benghazi about the video, the anti-Muslim video, is what triggered the attack on the U.S. embassy. And since he knew, so he had to appoint her as his national security advisor. So Lawrence O'Donnell, this fawning MSNBC, says, "You who are part of the group of national security professionals, people who have served in both Democratic and Republican administrations, who signed on to a letter to the American people, addressed to the American
as
people."
George is reading this here, I want everyone to have the image that Lawrence O'Donnell is licking her.
Licking her, exactly. That's exactly it. That's what it is. Why are you so wonderful? I mean, that's kind of my first question is, what makes you such a great person? What makes you such a great and profound thinker? What was it your background, your education? Was it some experience early in life that made you such a great person?
It's just divine intervention, George.
That's a divine intervention.
Chosen.
This is a letter unlike anything we've ever seen before in our political history. Really?
That's not true.
That's not true. I seem to remember there was stuff like this last time around. It's like whenever Trump is running, there's always a bunch of old timers who come along and say, Trump must be kept as far away from power as possible. There's been so much overlap, in fact, since World War II between the parties on foreign policy. Oh, this is the good old days.
Yeah. And how does it work out, everybody?
How has it worked out for you? There was never a situation in which Republican foreign policy or national security experts would ever feel themselves forced to come out and oppose a Republican candidate for president until Donald Trump. Again, they did this before. I mean, this is again. It started in 2016 when we had all these Republicans coming out against Trump. So, and then what was it like being part of a group coming together? Something that certainly back when you were serving in the UN, for example, in the Obama administration, would not have been something you'd ever see coming.
Well, I mean, again, these people, they ask the question answers itself. So why don't you just move on? You've already answered.
Exactly. And so then she answers, "Well, Lawrence, look, that's a good start. Look, I mean, there's a saying that back in the day, until recently, foreign policy and national security were played between the 40-yard lines between Democrats and Republicans. There was a center that was responsible, a rational center. There were differences, of emphasis and tone and approach on some things. But again, you're saying, well, just as you said, and how did this work out? There was a consensus to get into Vietnam. This wasn't a minority view. Well, let's get into Vietnam. It was an overwhelming consensus. Only 2 senators voted against the Tonkin Gulf resolutions. Only 2. Even George McGovern voted in favor of it. So, the consensus has hardly been, such a great success.
Yeah, well, the global war on terrorism, never on the ballot, George.
Right.
But how did that work out? And how is it still working out?
Exactly.
And it's this foreign policy consensus that has brought us to the brink of war between
That's right.
NATO and Russia. That's what
That's right.
he's talking about. Well,
That's
it
right.
hasn't worked out well.
Expansion of NATO, big, foreign policy consensus. But the fundamentals of national security, that America needs to be strong, that we need to stand with our allies, that we need to stand for our values, and that, we have to mean what we say. These are very fundamental things that never used to be under serious question.
Okay, did she say anything there? Just verbiage.
It's
And
exactly
again, values like backing a genocide. Okay, is that a value?
exactly values. Yeah, exactly these values. Supporting unconditionally Israel. You know, um, and along. I mean, those values. The values are that Israeli lives are worth more than non-Israeli lives. Those are your values, and that's why they kill 700 people, 1,000 people in Lebanon in a matter of 3 days. And that doesn't matter. No one cares. Absolutely no one cares, because it's just those are valueless lives. Who cares?
Did you see Dana Bash's report when they,
Yes,
yeah, she was clutching her pearls.
that's right. Exactly. Oh my God. Oh, oh my God. Imagine, Tel Aviv under attack. And along comes Donald Trump, who really is like the Neville Chamberlain of the Republican Party. He's an appeaser.
Yeah.
Kaboom! You brought in Neville Chamberlain.
Well, what's the argument there? Okay, let's take it at face value. Trump is Neville Chamberlain. How does that work?
It doesn't mean anything.
I can't even remotely understand what she's trying to say here, except
It
for
does.
blur him with Neville Chamberlain, which Neville Chamberlain gets a bad rap, you
Very
guys.
bad, right? Because
I don't want to go into it now, but he gets
exactly.
a
But that's but if you say he's like Neville Chamberlain, yes, Neville Chamberlain's view was that we're a rich but vulnerable empire. But if we get into a war, we will cease to be a rich, a vulnerable empire. In fact, we'll lose our empire. I mean, that was a very coherent national interest perspective on what's in the interest of Great Britain, and he was right.
And everyone, the policy that Neville Chamberlain was pursuing was what we would call today bipartisan in the UK. Okay, is that if there's going to be a war with Nazi Germany, we have to be prepared for it. We're not prepared
We're
for it.
not
I
ready.
think
Exactly. That's right. We have to wait because we're not ready now. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was circa 1940 where they might be in a position to do it. Under Neville Chamberlain, Britain started rearming. Okay.
Exactly. Started rearming. But look, even by 1944, you could see it was the Allied invasion was overwhelmingly American. Britain, yes, it contributed, but even by 1944, Britain still was in no position to mount any kind of a war against Germany, and that was Chamberlain's position. But it's this mindless regurgitation. Oh, Churchill great, Chamberlain bad. And she just trots this out. And as you say, somebody watching this, I said, Trump, what does that mean? Trump is like Neville Chamberlain. He's an appeaser.
I mean, I can't make a case. I can't make a case because I have no idea what she's thinking here.
No, that's right. And then he's an appeaser. And then she says he's a surrender monkey. And that's what we're seeing in his approach to Ukraine. So again, we're going back to this issue.
He's not president.
Exactly, he's not president. It's your people, the Democrats, who have brought this to pass. This horrific situation. There are 2 horrific wars, 2 very dangerous wars. America deeply involved in both. It didn't happen under Trump. Whatever. You can criticize Trump all you want, but they didn't happen on his watch. And then you sometimes say, "Oh, we're seeing his approach to Ukraine." Well, I mean, if he's going to try and bring this war to an end, there's probably going to be some appeasement involved. I mean, that's what diplomacy is about. Diplomacy, there is appeasement. Somebody has to get something. Everybody has to get something. Everybody has to walk away with something. Otherwise, you're not going to get a deal. And frankly, we've seen him, fall to blandishments from Xi Jinping and many others, when it was convenient for him and served his personal interest. It's interesting how they've brought this China thing. They brought China to the fore. Because somehow Trump is appeasing Xi Jinping. Harris did the same. I think Waltz did the same. It's very, very odd because it used to be the other way around. But sometimes, oh no, he's appeasing Xi Jinping.
I
And
don't see the evidence of
I
it.
don't see it either.
Under the Trump administration, there were tariffs put
Right.
on Chinese goods.
Yeah,
Joe Biden's administration maintained those.
exactly. He's maintained those. And yeah, and then at the time of COVID, he was quite nasty about Xi Jinping and China when he talked about the China virus. That's so when did I mean, other than he does these, on a personal level, says, yeah, I like Xi Jinping, I got on well with him. Just as he said, I like Putin, I got on well with him. That doesn't mean that somehow, oh, he really likes, he's going to support Xi Jinping. No, he just said on a personal level, I could deal with him. I mean, what do you want? You want a president who's going to what, punch Xi Jinping in the face? I mean, what do you want?
Again, he's a surrender monkey. Talking about lower, dispensing with norms and decorum.
Right,
It's only since 2016 that we have
right,
gotten
right.
this kind of language. You wouldn't, even the most ardent critics of Richard Nixon never would say something of that so coarse.
Right. Yes, that's right. Um, so that was Susan Rice. Oh, so that's why that is why more than 700 Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, very senior national security leaders, came together to oppose Donald Trump and support Kamala Harris. And it's important to say it was also to support Kamala Harris. They believe that she has the temperament and the intellect and the vision and the experience to be on day one an effective and strong commander in chief. This is just gibberish.
Yeah, and it's also a run.
Temperament, intellect, vision, experience to be an effective commander in chief on day one. When has she shown any of that?
It's also a run-on sentence, which I don't like. So.
There is that. I don't know. Just
she struggles with English grammar.
I think so. Yeah,
she did a double negative once in an interview.
Yeah. But she's a very reliable, avatar of this the national security establishment.
I mean, who do you think is babysitting the entire Biden administration? It's Susan Rice, everyone.
That's right.
She's the snitch.
That's right, because she works for Obama. I mean,
Yeah.
she's an Obama creature. So and now we're getting something very interesting, that the Democrats are getting very anguished, not about what's going on in Lebanon, not about the dangerous situation where, with Iran and Israel, which basically could will at any moment could escalate into a mutual missile exchange, and which will bring America into the conflict immediately, because America is already directly involved. No, they worry that Netanyahu is inserting himself into the presidential race.
Oh, the horror of it, George.
But I thought that was Putin's role. I thought Putin had a monopoly of getting involved in. So this is it. So it's like, we're not interested in any of that, anything that's actually going on, any really serious thing like people getting killed, war, about to break out, and America involved in it. No, he is inserting himself. He's trying to tilt
Well,
the Trump-Harris race.
I just love the title of this. They suspect.
That's right.
What was your first clue? This is
And
so infantile. It's so amateur. Please respect them.
it is. And of course, as we'll see when we look at this article, it's so mindless. The idea that Netanyahu cares one whit who's the president. Netanyahu expects all U.S. administrations, Democrat, Republican, to do his bidding. He always has. He doesn't care whether it's Trump or Biden or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter to him. You just have to do what Israel wants, and he gets his way. I mean, it's the same thing with Russia. Obviously Russia is supporting Trump. It's just, other countries are not preoccupied with all the ins and outs of a presidential race in the way, the media and the pundits are.
Netanyahu could care less who wins the presidency because the influence of the Israel lobby on the American political system is so overwhelming. It's irrelevant who's the president. It doesn't.
Exactly. So here's the Hill. Democrats increasingly suspect that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to interfere in the U.S. domestic politics by ignoring calls by President Biden to negotiate a peace deal in Gaza and by confronting Hezbollah in Iran weeks before the U.S. election. So that's his only motive. The fact that he's ignoring Biden's calls for a ceasefire, assuming, of course, which is a big assumption, that we take any of these claims seriously, that he's actually serious about a ceasefire, but that it's all about his domestic calculation, the domestic American politics. The rapidly escalating confrontation with Israel, Hezbollah, and Hezbollah's ally Iran has undercut President Biden's efforts to achieve peace through diplomacy. No, they just accept blandly that the Biden is making efforts to achieve peace through diplomacy. This has been going on October the 7th. That's next Monday. That will be 1 year. 1 year of perpetual Biden efforts to achieve peace through diplomacy. He hasn't done a good job.
I don't know what his efforts into these days, but it's certainly not diplomacy.
And the growing threat of a broader conflict has opened the door for former President Trump to argue that the world is spiraling out of control on Biden's watch. You mean it isn't? It's not spiraling.
You're saying it is inspiring?
No, everything is cool. Everything is on track.
Trump doesn't have to make that argument because it's happening, irrespective of what Trump says or thinks. It's exactly what's happening.
Yes. Exactly. If Trump hadn't said it, no one else would have said it. Yeah.
And it wouldn't be happening.
It wouldn't be happening. Biden's polling numbers with Muslim Americans continue to deteriorate amid the mounting violence in the region, which poses a serious political liability, with Vice President Harris in Michigan a must-win state for Democrats. What has that got to do with Trump?
You just stole the words from me. What does it have to do with Trump?
Says, meanwhile, Netanyahu's relationship with even the most pro-Israel Democrats has become increasingly confrontational. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made headlines in March when he called Netanyahu a major obstacle to peace and urged Israel to hold new elections. Around that time, Biden called Israel's offensive in Gaza over the top. Well, how did that all work out? With Schumer talking about Netanyahu. I mean, Netanyahu still showed up in July to address both houses of Congress, got a standing ovation.
Schumer was there.
Schumer was there. It's a bit over the top. I do think it's over the top.
That's such a dismissive way to talk about a genocide. It's over the top.
It's over the top. It's over the top. It's over the top. It's a little like when Obama, when the Senate published its report about torture, we tortured some folks.
We tortured some folks. Yeah.
And then we have Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. It says, I certainly worry that Prime Minister Netanyahu is watching the American election as he makes decisions about his military campaigns in the north and Gaza. So that's it. So the guy, launches these attacks on Lebanon. He decapitates the leadership of Hezbollah. He's almost certainly going to now launch a missile attack on Iran. But apparently he's preoccupied with the American election. There's no evidence at all that Netanyahu really cares one way or the other about Republicans or Democrats. I mean, the only thing that matters to him is, are you going to do everything that I want? Are you going to write the check, as quickly as possible when I demand it? And then Murphy says, I hope that this is not true. But it's certainly a possibility that the Israeli government is not going to sign any diplomatic agreement prior to the American election as a means potentially to try to influence the result. So otherwise they would have signed an agreement. I mean, but apparently it's, they think, I don't think it's a good idea to sign an agreement because, the election might help Biden. I mean, actually, this is a man who has lied consistently to pretend, not very convincing, that he's interested in some kind of a deal, and then sabotage at the moment there was any deal on the horizon. This 21 day, which is last week, the 21-day ceasefire, he assassinated the Hezbollah leader after he had agreed to the 21-day ceasefire. Nasrallah had agreed to the ceasefire, and then Netanyahu ordered his assassination.
Murphy said, alluding to divisions among Democrats over the war. Well, there are divisions among the Democrats, but they always sign the check.
That's right. Exactly. So they had, it's theater. This is theater. What Chuck Schumer did was theater to show that, well, we're not happy with what Netanyahu's doing. It's like when Bernie Sanders, he's a right wing, he's a very right wing government. I don't support the right. I support Israel's right to defend itself. I don't support the right wing government. A poll of 500 Arab American voters conducted from September the 9th to September the 20th showed Trump and Harris in a virtual tie, with Trump leading slightly 42% to 41%. It reflects a huge erosion of support for the Biden-Harris administration compared to 2020, when Biden had the support of 59% of Arab American voters. And why do you think that is?
Yeah. And what does this have to do with Netanyahu?
Okay. Exactly.
It has to do with American foreign policy.
That's right. A senior Senate Democratic aide backed Murphy's claims, noting that Netanyahu has long had a reputation as a meddler in American politics.
No kidding. No kidding. No kidding.
But I always thought that only Russia did this. I mean, I thought that weren't we told that what Russia did? I mean, you remember that the interference in the 2016 election, that was 9/11, Pearl Harbor, and the Kennedy assassination all rolled into one. Never has America been under such attack as the 2016 election interference by Russia.
And there's been no evidence to back that up, but there are plenty of checks being cashed all over Washington in support of Israel over American national security.
Right. Well, I mean, when Netanyahu interfered in the 2012 election, against Obama, well, that was, it wasn't personal. It wasn't because he didn't like the Democrats, because it was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. He didn't want to deal with Iran, so he obviously was supporting Romney. That's the way Netanyahu thinks. He's not thinking about Democrats and Republicans. He's just, what's in it for the Jews? I mean, that's the saying.
I don't think Netanyahu has a very high opinion of Americans in general.
No, why would he?
Why would he?
Would you if you were Netanyahu?
Nope.
I don't think for a minute that Bibi's not doing it just to impact domestic elections. I don't, there's so many negatives there that I can't quite figure out. I don't think for a minute that Bibi's not doing it just to impact domestic elections. I think he thinks he can get the Jewish vote to swing, but he may get the Arab American vote to swing. All right.
Yeah, but this is not Netanyahu. This is American foreign policy. It's what the Biden administration is
Right,
doing.
right,
Okay.
right. That's right. Exactly. Um, and then the Senate Democratic source pointed to Netanyahu's speech to a joint session of Congress in July, where he vowed total victory and denounced American anti-war protesters, many of whom are progressives, as useful idiots who help Israel's enemies. Um,
Well, who invited him to say that?
exactly. Who invited? That's right. Um, and and again, it's not so different from what mainstream Democrats. I mean, remember when Nancy Pelosi denounced the people who were, attacking her for supporting Israel? She said, "Oh, these people are being paid by Russia." Again, she just sort of blurted this out because that's her go-to response to anything, which is, "Oh, they're being paid by Russia." But that's exactly. And then in other times, she accused them of being paid by China. So Pelosi, who also has been critical of Netanyahu, Pelosi says exactly the same thing. Oh, yeah, they're just useful idiots. They're being funded from abroad. He understands American politics. They are 100% involved in American politics. And the aide said, adding that the view is widespread among Democrats on Capitol Hill. So the Democrats on Capitol Hill are angry because they want Netanyahu to help them out. Hey, we've got an election. Please help us. Please help us out. Please sign some kind of an agreement to help Joe and Kamala out. And then they're oh, please, just something. Put your
But
John Hancock on this piece of paper and keep it there for a couple of weeks.
well, I'm sure Netanyahu would say something along the following: "Is it you're supposed to help me out? I do something for you?
I do
Well,
exactly.
since when?"
When has that ever happened? When has Israel ever done anything for anyone? I mean, that's the whole point. Is that America is supposed to do things for Israel. That's the way it works. Uh, but there's no. If we don't get a peace deal, we might lose the election. That's all that matters.
Well, blame Joe Biden. Uh,
Yeah,
I, Netanyahu is a political creature, okay, and he is only interested in himself and his own country and the
right,
advancement of the Zionist project. He
right,
doesn't give a hoot who's in the White House,
right.
okay. I mean, and we've seen unparalleled disrespect towards the American president from the Israeli prime minister. Unparalleled.
I'm
And,
paranoid.
and it goes with there's no consequences for it.
That's
You
right.
know
And
why? Because Republicans and Democrats for decades have created this monster, and now the monster runs you. Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, that's right. But I just find it funny that they just want this. They couldn't care less whether there's a deal or there isn't a deal. All they care about
About
is
how
for
is
Democrats
the
to
election
win. Yeah,
right?
once we pass November the 5th, then bomb to your heart's content. Just smash everything there is. I mean, we don't care, but just please, before November the 5th, sign something. And Israel has done that. Remember when Obama in 2008, after Obama was elected, then they launched one of their many operations against Gaza. Obama said nothing. He absolutely said
Well, I
nothing.
mean, he did say my inauguration is coming up. Knock it off. Okay, we've done what we're going to do, and they did. Okay,
That's right.
no hard feelings.
No hard feelings. Yeah, yeah. Um, and then it says this aide. So this aide is saying, look at everything that's been happening. The aide says, pointing to the entry of Israeli troops into southern Lebanon, 100% interference in domestic politics. Really? I mean, domestic American or domestic Lebanese politics? Domestic politics. He's done it his entire career.
Yeah. What? Nothing new is coming out of this article. Okay.
But the whole thing about the Democrats are very anxious, and I think they are anxious. I mean, I think they do think that this is going to be bad for them. David Rothkopf. He's the guy. Is a Democrat He's also a foreign agent for the United Arab Emirates, so he's making money as a lobbyist for the UAE. And he says, I think it's a reasonable concern based on conversations I've had with Israelis. They understand that Netanyahu is a Trump supporter and feels it would be more in his long-term interest to have Trump in the presidency. Therefore, it might in some way affect the decisions he's making over the course of the next 5 weeks. Again, there's no evidence that he's a Trump supporter, and Trump himself has complained bitterly about how Netanyahu immediately rushed to recognize Biden as the winner of the 2020 election, and he didn't join Trump in assassinating Soleimani. Netanyahu conceived the idea, but then left Trump to carry the can. So this is just completely made up that Netanyahu is somehow a Trump supporter. I mean,
No, this is a form of blackmail. That warning the Biden administration, don't you even say a word to us because they play into this fear.
That's
okay.
Right.
So I mean, but see, we have to think about what I just said. So the Biden administration is being blackmailed. How that means you're in a weaker position. How did you get in a weak position?
That's right.
How did you allow this to happen?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because all of this time, you've said these things. Oh, Israel should not do that. Don't go into Rafah. Israel goes into Rafah. You gotta be careful. Don't just kill civilians. Israel, continues killing civilians. And then it's always Israel has simply ignored everything Biden told them, but without any consequence. I mean, where was the consequence for Israel for ignoring him?
There could have been a consequence. The pathological liar known as Blinken, Secretary of State, he could have called them on the carpet and said, "Hey, I got 2 reports here coming in saying you're cutting off aid here." They could have started using their leverage. Then the Netanyahu would start listening. So here's Netanyahu. He knows that the Secretary of State, the U.S. State Department, will lie through their teeth for him. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. But you want a reward? Why? Because if you do it otherwise, you will lose support because you're anti-Israel. See, this is a hopeless situation that American political elites have created for themselves.
Exactly.
You can give Netanyahu credit if you want, but I mean, he's playing in a theater that works only in one direction, his direction.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's in his direction, because ultimately, if the United States does not wield power, then these are just empty. Don't do this. Then they go ahead and do it. Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. But what about the ceasefire agreement? Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. And then they assassinate whoever. Before that they assassinated Hamas's political leader. So again, make sure that ceasefire never gets off the ground. So this is of course, if there are no consequences, then Netanyahu said, well, I do. Where in any of this is there any suggestion that it's about Trump and the election? I mean, it's all about Israel. That's all Netanyahu cares about. And then asked about how Netanyahu's potential impact the election, he noted the Biden administration's inability to broker a peace deal despite months of concerted effort, which has become the sore point with members of the Democratic base. The theory is that unrest in the Middle East might not reflect well on the administration, but having said that, if people go back, they'll also find there were problems to which Trump contributed. It will affect different voters differently, but that's the underlying theory.
It's a pretty weak theory. I don't know why you're bringing Trump into this. There is
exactly
an administration in power. The October 7th last year, that was the Biden administration. Right. It's right. October 4th. 2024. It's the Biden administration.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's really the mentality of these people, is that it's just they're preoccupied with their own domestic issues, and they're trying to find some way to blame this on Trump. It's somehow Trump's fault. Yeah, yeah, got it. We got it. The reason Netanyahu doesn't sign these agreements is that Trump is telling him not to sign. As if Netanyahu, of all people, oh well, Trump told me not to do this. Well, okay, well if Trump says it, I better do it. And I think there was that remember that woman Judy Woodruff, who she's from PBS. She actually said that. She said, "Well, the word is that Netanyahu walked away from a peace agreement because of Trump, and of course." She was immediately challenged. Where's your evidence for that? And of course, she had to back away. Well, I did say it was the word is. I didn't say that I have any evidence for it, but I mean, it was a ridiculous thing. but somehow they want to blame this on Trump. It was all just like the Republicans and the border bill. Oh, these people, they just voted that way simply because Trump told them to do it.
These people believe in the tooth fairy.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
The verbiage that we just went through here, this is all a figment of a large group of people's imagination.
Right.
Why? Because these people have been behind an atrocious policy.
Right.
And the US is shown to be feckless, amoral, immoral.
Yep.
It's an affront to humanity what's going on right now, and they want to. Oh, but maybe Trump will get elected. I mean, like, come on, can we have a sense of proportion here?
Yeah, exactly. We were talking before we started that I get a feeling again. I might be wrong. I have a feeling that somehow this election is going to break for Trump in the last 10 to 14 days, in much the same way that the 1980 election broke for Reagan in the last 10 to 14 days. I think people are going to feel, just like they thought with Carter, that somehow he's just in over his head. Things are going to go from bad to worse under Carter. And
George is kind of moving me in that direction. I'm not there yet, but I'm really glad that you brought up the last 2 weeks in the 1980 election, because I remember that was my first election, and I remember it very well. And George is absolutely right. It was in the air. It was in the air.
Right.
Something was changing. Okay. Yeah, I think it's possible. And I lost my train of thought.
Right.
But it's like before we started here, I said I feel like I'm Emmanuel Macron because I can change my mind on this one quite easily.
I mean, understandable. Look, who knows? I mean, yeah. But I think the reason I was.
Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Is people just remember that economic times were better with Trump.
Yeah.
And we have to go back to that. George and I can get real nerdy at times, and I admit that. But a lot of people just had more in the bank, and the dollar went longer, get more. It wasn't so underwater, and everybody's underwater right now. Okay, and I think that the campaign of joy and all this stuff. Most people just say it's not doing anything for me. It's just not working for me, and I before COVID. I mean, George and I had a very separate conversation, but Trump was a shoo-in in 2020. I mean, a shoo-in.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And now we have this economy, and I have to admit, Trump contributed to the inflation, but the Biden administration wasn't able to deal with it.
Right.
And I think that we can talk a lot about foreign policy, but I tend to think that you may be right just for the reason people say, I've had 4 bad years. This is just not working.
I agree. I mean, I think, ultimately that's what people think about, is like, am I better off? But in terms of the foreign policy aspect is that if you're looking at it, these 2 wars and you're thinking, well, what's the likelihood that there's going to be a world war? And you think, well, if Harris becomes president, it's guaranteed. I mean, I really don't think there's a war. It can be avoided either with Iran or in Ukraine. I mean, it's guaranteed with Harris. It's not guaranteed with Trump, and I think that's going to decide. I mean, the fact that these 700 national security officials say, "Oh, great, we'll have Harris." Yeah, that's what they want. They want that. They want a world war. There's jobs for them.
Because the same 700 plus they want a continuation of this horrific foreign policy of the Biden administration.
Yeah.
These 700 plus are saying, vote for the status quo.
Yes.
And that's insane. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I've always kind of believed, Jordan and I've talked about this so many times, that uh, Israel is a very difficult political animal in American politics. It's disgusting, but it's a reality. But when it comes to Ukraine, my gut tells me Trump doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Okay. It's like, settle it
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and one more thought. I don't know what the hurricane name was. What was the name
Oh,
of
it's
the hurricane?
Helena. Yeah, I always forget these names because it's always a
Yeah.
woman's name and I get
Yeah,
confused.
well, it's all over the place in social media right now. I was bombarded with it. I was on two taxi rides today and were quite long because there was a lot of traffic, and just people pumping out the numbers about the victims of the hurricane and what kind of compensation they got. FEMA is broke apparently, don't have any money. But where did the money go? Where's all the money going?
Yeah,
Okay. You
right.
know, so when Netanyahu was getting on the plane, another 8 billion showed up for him, and then when
That's it.
Zelensky, the bridesmaid of the whole week,
Yes.
he walked away with
He
80.
worked with like something like yeah, 8 billion or whatever it was. And he's
Hey,
had something like what 170 billion at least. I mean,
and the most powerful thing, and it's politicking, I don't deny it, but it's also the truth, is that all of this foreign aid to fuel wars that have nothing to do with us, okay?
yeah,
And what about the family that just lost their house? You got to give them $750.
$750. Yeah. Yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, these congressional districts, I think I know where they're going to go. Okay.
I think so. I agree, and I think that's a very important point. That 750, and then you're going to say this Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Secretary, said, "Well, there's no money in FEMA. We don't have enough in FEMA to see us through the hurricane season." I said, "You don't have enough money."
How is that possible? How is
Exactly.
that possible?
Hurricane season comes around every year. How can you not have enough to see you through the hurricane season? That's what you're supposed to do when you know it's going to come around, that you have money available for that. You can't avoid it. It's going to come around. I mean, you can't, well, there's no money. Well, where did it go? I mean, you've been sending all this money to Ukraine, and now you're saying, well, there's no money for, Americans who are losing their homes because of the hurricane, which was, again, entirely foreseeable. So it's and that I think you're absolutely right. That's a really bad indictment of the Biden administration.
Well, what did Susan Rice say about that during her interview with Lawrence? I bet they didn't even mention it.
No, exactly,
Because they
exactly,
don't care. They just simply don't care.
exactly.
They just think, the American people are a bunch of country bumpkins that'll just go along
Right.
with it. Well, they probably go along with it because they only hear one message, the mainstream media, the corporate media, all the time, and none of these issues are ever put on the
No,
ballot.
no. But you're right, because that's exactly how they see American people. They are a bunch of country bumpkins. They talk funny, they dress funny. They have all sorts of strange political views that they don't like. What do we care?
And some of them chew tobacco.
They chew tobacco. They show up for Trump MAGA rallies. Why would we care at all about them? What do they matter? $750? Yeah, and they should be bloody grateful for that. So that's really the attitude. I think that's going to really be very damaging to
Oh,
Biden.
I do too. I think this was I know people don't like the term anymore, but I like it. This is a black swan that they hadn't counted on.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And considering the devastation of it, it's going to be on people's mind on election day, George. Yeah. It's not like to be, oh, that was yesterday. That was a
yes,
long time ago. That was a long time ago.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
I have to wonder if the flood waters will have dissipated by then.
right.
Okay.
No, exactly. And I think it should be emphasized is that, you all this money that you're giving abroad, all this money you're talking. And again, we talk about, all this, the Israel lobby in Congress and so on. Out in the country, they don't care that much about Israel. Those people in Florida or North Carolina, they really don't care about Israel. It's yeah, Washington D.C. Yeah, Israel, Israel. But other countries say, hey, 9 billion for Israel, nothing here for us. There's something wrong with that picture. So I think that is going to be damaging, and it shows the elites that they don't care about ordinary people.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. Well, I mean, and then a lot of them are just Trump supporters, so
Yeah.
also. Okay.
Yeah. That's right. So that whole the Sun Belt strategy. Oh, Harris is pursuing the Sun Belt strategy. Oh, she's really, eating into the into the Republican base. I think we're going to put that on hold for the time
Well,
being.
and also, and this is one of, George and I are kind of one of our pet peeves here. We're all getting flooded with all of these public opinion polls. I just don't believe them. Sorry, I just don't. I have no reason to believe them.
No. I
Okay.
I
Some
don't believe.
supporters are not going to answer the phone.
Right. But even when you look at the polls, they're not looking that great for Harris. We know there's always a bias, a Democrat bias in the polls. We saw in 2016, 2020, first Hillary Clinton and Biden were substantially ahead going into election day. Um, and even after the election, in both cases, Biden and Harris won the popular vote by a substantial margin. That wasn't enough for Hillary Clinton to put it because of the electoral college. It wasn't enough to win. And for Biden, it was very, very narrow for him a victory. I mean, he really was something like 50,000 votes would have gone, and had it gone the other way, he would have lost that election. So when you look at the polls now, which has Harris supposedly 2-3% ahead, that isn't enough. It wasn't enough for Hillary Clinton, and Biden was more. Biden's I think was about 5% or something in the popular vote in 2020.
Yeah,
So it's not looking well for Harris.
and also when you look at the cable shows and the networks and all that, remember everyone, these are the audience of their message is themselves.
Right.
Okay, that's the message. This echo, they can't break out of this echo chamber,
Right.
but they keep convincing themselves
Yep.
of something that is completely divorced.
You're absolutely right, and that's why, I mean, we saw it the other day with that vice presidential debate when the topics they selected: abortion, gun control, child care, climate change. These are the, and January the 6th. These are the issues that preoccupy them. They're not the issues that preoccupy voters. And this happens all the time. It's like, again, they're talking about January the 6th because of Jack Smith. He's issued that 165-page not evidence against Trump. Yeah, MSNBC, CNN are sort of eating this up day and night, but no one in the country is interested.
Well,
That's
the
4
people
years ago.
in the flyover country, they remember how much eggs cost in
Yes, that's it.
2020. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds kind of banal, but I mean, we all go through in one day after another. That's our existence. Okay. It's not really kind of this, you know, um, elite thinking. I
Right.
mean, that from what, the stuff I read, and just there's so many people are downtrodden right now. And, but we have to support Israel. I mean, it's an affront. It's an affront to
It really is. Yeah.
intelligence.
Exactly, at the front, and then that strange creature wearing his green T-shirt, who sort of comes around every few months.
Tariq really liked your sitcom character.
Yeah, exactly, sitcom
No,
character.
because that's where, as Tariq pointed out, that's where he came from. He was
Yeah,
a
exactly. Yeah, the comedic actor. So he shows up, and then it's always good for a laugh because he's always wearing that T-shirt, and it's not even clear why is he always wearing a T-shirt, and it's like he can. He's never able to put on a jacket, but somehow, but that's part of the humor. Oh, here he is with his customary green
Well, he's kind
T-shirt.
of like a Gomer Pyle character, that because in what was it, the Andy Griffith Show? one of my favorites. Okay, the Gomer Pyle would show up every four or five episodes. Okay, and in those days, everybody they made like 25 shows a season. You know, not these
Yeah,
people here, I mean,
yeah,
and making see series right now. I mean, it's like 8 or 10. In those days, you know, they did 36.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And Gomer Pyle would show up, and Goober too. He would show up. Okay. Then Gomer got his own show. Okay. But and some people watching this right now have no idea what I'm
Right,
talking.
it goes back a way, but you know, it's always good. You know, it's part of the gaggle, part of the charm of the gaggle. We sort of remember, you know, days on by. The other day we were talking about Don Rickles, and again, you know, younger listeners probably have no idea
Go
who Don Rickles
Don
was.
Rickles. Go to YouTube, search it. It's awesome, awesome. Like, not George's cup of tea, but I really liked it.
No, I like him. I like him. I just, you know, it just again, it was a little bit before my time. You know, it was so.
Well, I watched the reruns, everybody. I didn't watch it. I wasn't watching TV in the 50s. I watched the reruns. But George is right. We're getting down to the wire right now, and trying to think more outside the box. Forget the polls, okay? And one of the things George and I, you know, what we just did today is that what do they want us to think about? And that tells me what they don't want us to think
Right,
about.
right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
I mean, the
And
guy that wrote that article for The Hill, I mean, people, he got paid to do that, everyone.
exactly. I mean, imagine that, you know, you're writing about the Middle East, you know, this horrific, you know, the horrific, the scale of the killings, um, and the dangers. I mean, we're ready for the brink. There's no question. There's going to be a missile exchange. The only question now is how serious this is going to be. But it's going to come. And the only thing you care about is whether it hurts Donald Trump or helps Donald Trump. That's it. That's your perspective. I mean, then you know, yeah, that's the sort of the corruption and decadence of American journalism.
George, what how radical was the Trump administration that there's so much fear mongering about it? I mean, you can make the claim that he just was, you know, he kind of governed like maybe like Mitt Romney would have
Right.
governed, or
Yeah.
George Bush Jr. I mean, George and I were fundamentally disappointed with the Trump
Right.
administration because he wasn't conservative enough, not populist enough. Okay,
Right.
so
No,
this is a scarecrow.
of course it is. Of course it. But ultimately, if you're president and you keep your country out of a war, then you say, well, that's been a reasonably
Good thing.
successful
Good
presidency.
thing. The
You
good
know,
thing.
that's right. If you know wars, you know, break out on your watch, and you have no ability and no willingness to bring these wars to an end, then it's a failed presidency. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a failed presidency, and the Biden-Harris presidency will be a failed presidency. You know, there were no wars when you came in, and there are these terrible wars now, and very dangerous wars on your way out the door. So that's a failed presidency. I mean, that's it's a simple calculus.
Oh, what was that? How did they describe Kamala Harris? She's skilled and knowledgeable, and
That's right. Ready on day one to be commander in chief.
I wouldn't let her be a maitre d' in a restaurant.
No, no. I think she wouldn't be very good as a maitre d'. Imagine she starts cackling, you know, as she's leading you to your table. You say, I think maybe we'll go somewhere else.
Well, we can end on this, George. The 700 and plus people that signed that letter from the intelligence community. Kamala Harris is the greatest gift that they could ever get.
That's right.
Has
Exactly.
no values, no knowledge. I
That's right.
mean, literally a blank
That's
page.
right.
I mean,
Exactly.
wow,
Exactly.
this is something that they've been dreaming of.
Exactly. That's right.
Remember
Exactly.
when Ronald Reagan, you know, towards the end of his administration, wanted to ban all nuclear weapons. I mean,
Yeah.
people, were terrified of what he was saying. But he had a vision, and I think an awesome vision.
Right.
I mean,
No,
why
that's
not?
right.
Let's think about it. Give it a
Right.
try. Why
No,
not?
yeah. That's right. Absolutely. We know that Harris is just simply going to go along with it. I mean, because she has no ideas of her own. None. I mean, that's what's so remarkable that she's reached this. She's been in politics for so many years. She's 60 years old. You know, she's been an attorney general, a senator, now vice president. She has no ideas about anything. no ideas. If you ask her now, could you just explain what's going on in Ukraine and what American policy should be? She would absolutely be clueless. She wouldn't have any idea of how to explain this. And so, yeah, they're absolutely excited.
Well,
Great, we'll get her.
she would start out by saying that, I was from a middle class family. I mean,
Exactly. I grew up in a middle class
that's
family.
all righty. Okay, this is Friday. This is our wrap for the week here. George will join me on my program on Sunday. We'll do a
A
Sunday
Sunday
wrap of the
show, yeah,
evening, and we'll have a
a
live
live
stream.
stream on Monday, which is also the anniversary of the October the 7th attack. So we'll have something to talk about.
Absolutely. So much to talk about. All right, this is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Pass it over to you, George.
Exactly. So, think about before you go and enjoy the weekend, think about the
Trouser
dogs.
check. Trouser check.
Yeah. See, Apple's view is that, you don't get a weekend unless weekends are for closers. I mean, that's basically his like coffees for closers, weekends
We're
are for
matching,
closers.
we're matching today.
Exactly. He basically thinks if you're not contributing, you don't get a free weekend. Like he's a big contributor. So keeping that in mind, if you can contribute something to the tip jar, that'll keep Apple happy for a little while. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and we'll get back into Apple's good graces, which is very, very hard to do. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.